Good. Guess it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nilda Gums, and I'm Chief of Staff here at NCTA. I want to welcome you. It's nice to see very familiar faces that I haven't seen in a long time. We're welcoming you to our house. I actually have no role here other than to introduce my boss, Michael Powell, who many of you know, particularly from his days at the FCC, but also leading NCTA for almost 15 years now. So, Michael, I would love to turn it over to you to say a few remarks. And then we're going to head out. Just don't think we're rude, but he's got to tell him.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilda. And I am fitting this in, but I wanted to because I was excited that we have the great opportunity to offer our facilities for your meetings this afternoon and for your panels. And so it's my privilege to welcome you here to our home at NCTA. I've had the great pleasure as I look out over this room to have worked with many of you and many of your groups over a 30-year career, actually. I've always been deeply interested in the same kinds of things this community is interested in. And so I'm happy to see you here. I also sort of applaud and commend your intentional focus on the first 100 years, or at least the first 33 days, and feels like 2,000 years already. But this is a monumental time in the history of American government. I think some of the most significant and foundational questions in most of our lifetimes will be asked and answered. And how policy emerges out of that environment is going to be an incredibly intellectual, cultural, and legal challenge. And so I applaud the work that you're doing. I would share with you that at NCTA, we are engaged in something very similar, evaluating policy outcomes and how they will affect and not only our industry, but our customers and our communities. And if you'll indulge me, one in particular that is of keen interest to us, largely because in the desperate effort to pay for reconciliation, there'll be moves to talk about spectrum policy. And I just want to leave you with simple thoughts for you to consider and to continue to work with you on. I've worked in this area for a very long time, and I think there's a fundamental shift that needs to be embraced by the government, and that is we have reached a world of finite spectrum. All the spectrum is utilized by somebody, and we need to remember what the most important uses of that spectrum are. We're big champions of sharing America's resources with all users. We believe in shared spectrum models. Wi-Fi, which is an unlicensed spectrum model, is the most important and beloved technology in the world. 60% of all internet traffic in the world goes over Wi-Fi. That spectrum is free. It's free to users, it's free to consumers, and it has brought enormous value. When I started at the FCC, you could buy one internet connection that would allow you to use one computer. Wi-Fi has allowed everyone in a household who has a device to be able to utilize that same single connection. Can you imagine how we would have gotten through the stay-at-home world of the pandemic without Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi doesn't always have a natural political constituency, though, and it's always facing the big three wireless carriers whose model is they want the government to give them exclusive use of those resources, not to be shared with anybody else. Now, I don't condemn them for wanting to get what they can get, but it's really critical that as we try to resolve where we will invest our spectrum resources, that we stay focused, number one, on Wi-Fi and unlicensed, and also shared models. And the last thing I would say about that is every bit of spectrum everybody wants is currently being utilized either by the Department of Defense or other critical public users, all who, by the way, have critical uses for that spectrum. I don't believe we're going to create a pipeline of spectrum by trying to pry it out of the hands of war fighters every time we need some. That is a long, exhaustive, bitter political process. We think technology has the answer. We think bands can be shared so that farmers can build their own networks and not have to contract with AT&T to do it, and that we're all allowed to use the same spectrum, and the war fighters are allowed to continue to protect the continental United States and whatever threats that come our way in the world. So we encourage you to learn more about that. We encourage you to work with us on that if you can. But I know you have many other just as equally important topics to cover. So I will just sum up and say thank you for what you do. Thank you for being with us. And if we can ever be of assistance in offering any kind of help or insight, please don't hesitate to let us know. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, NCTA, for hosting us in your beautiful space. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rosa Mendoza. I am the founder, president, and CEO of ALLvanza. Before we begin our discussion today, I want to acknowledge our event partners, the Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council. Thank you, Robert, for your partnership. OCA is Asian Pacific American Advocates. Thank you, too, for your partnership. And LGBT Tech. Thank you, Carlos, for your partnership. We are at ALLvanza are always pleased to partner with these organizations to present our newest installment in our Moving Underserved Communities Forward event series, First 100 Days of the Trump Administration, Expectations, and Perspectives. Our panel of experts will share their insights on what's happening now, what we can expect next, and how businesses, policymakers, and innovators can navigate these challenges. Carlos?
Thank you, Rosa. I'm Carlos Gutierrez. I am the head of policy for LGBT Tech. I feel like we're doing an award show here. It's nice. I like the vibe. Thank you so much for coming. LGBT Tech stands at the intersection of tech policy and marginalized communities. So this series is important. And we know that you guys could be anywhere and you chose to be here. So we really appreciate that. So with that, I will turn it over to Robert.
Thank you both. Robert Branson, MMTC. I got a real quick job. I get to introduce one of my friends who's going to moderate it, Grace Coe, who is the Vice President for Government Relations at Ciena, the world's leading developer of optical networking equipment. I think I first met Grace when I was at an FCBA annual seminar, and she was just about to go take a job with the White House. Guy named President Trump at the time, so the first Trump version. But she's had significant experience, in the government. She's been a U.S. ambassador. She's been a U.S. representative and head of delegation at International Telecommunication Union, the World Radio Communication Conference. So she's really been a leader in advocating for the United States, both here and abroad. So. And there's a lot more I could go into, but without further ado, let me turn it over to Grace, who will introduce the panel and get us moving. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you. Do I need to click something or?
I don't think it's on.
I don't think it's on either.
Good one.
Is it ready?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, it is.
look at that. Okay, great. Great. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Bob called me up to ask me to do this panel, and he says, you love to serve, and I do love to serve, especially with MMTC, and anytime Bob asks, you got to show up. It's probably how you guys got all roped into this, right? Well, thanks for joining me here with these thought leaders to talk about tech and telecom priorities and how they might impact underserved communities during the first 100 days of the Trump administration. So here with me today, Ronald Busby Sr., President and CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers, Larry Gonzalez, Principal and Founder of the Raven Group, Alan Gutierrez, President of the MCA Group, and Brent Wilkes, Senior Vice President for Institutional Development at the Hispanic Federation. I am not going to go into your bios, but what I wanted to do was to start off by asking each of you what communities you're representing here, and what are your priorities when it comes to tech and telecom. So with that, I'll start from the other end then. Brent.
Fantastic. So Hispanic Federation, of course, represents the Latino community, which is currently 20% of the U.S. population and growing. And the way we support Latino communities is by investing and supporting the local Latino community-based organizations around the country. We currently have 780 member Latino organizations that we support. And we provide financial support, so grants, but we also do a lot of training, so capacity building. We do model program development. We work with them on board development, certainly on fundraising and finances. And the theory of change that we have is that by supporting these local Latino community-based organizations, we can have help them become more impactful and serve more people, and really create change by investing resources into those organizations. So we're 35 years old, and we are currently supporting these organizations to the tune of about $26 million a year.
That's significant. But what are your biggest tech and telecom priorities, you think?
And so really, I think the biggest ones for Hispanic Federation are focused on ensuring that the community is getting access to broadband, is able to really adopt at the early age, so that young people are kind of growing up with access to the internet, that they have developing those skill sets that they'll need to be competitive in the new economy. And then all along the way, we're providing digital skilling classes to try to make sure that we're getting folks into these great paying jobs that are out there. And it's not just in the tech sector, I should say. We figure that now that about 90% of all new jobs that are being created require some type of technology skills. And so what we're doing is making sure that we're equipping folks with those skill sets that can help them be competitive. So for us, it's really about this opportunity agenda and ensuring that people have the skill sets to be successful. And so really all our policy priorities kind of flow from that perspective.
Nice. Alan?
Yes. No, thank you very much, Rosa, for the invitation, and pleasure to be here. Myself, I say I look at it from a macro perspective in terms of what businesses or what communities to represent. So I say all communities, but certainly I've had the opportunity to, in the previous capacities, to really represent the Latino Coalition and also the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and looking at ecosystems and entrepreneurship, and really engaging not only in the Hispanic community, but all communities in terms of looking at ways to how to help them start, manage, and grow in that aspect. And certainly from the Hispanic community perspective, you look at, the projections of, 5 million Hispanic business owned, and what are the, next 5 and 10 years. And certainly I think there's a lot there that we can look at. And so certainly my opportunity from not only in the nonprofit arena, but also in corporate that I've had before, and now as my own firm as well, and been in government too, is to look at ways that we can continue work on a very holistic approach to with all communities to make it this great nation to continue being that dominance as it relates on the global stage.
That's fantastic. And do you see where do you see how the government can be? What are your tech and telecom priorities then for?
I look back at the span of my career and looking at back then in small business and all the challenges that small businesses had, right? From that standpoint, when you look at a competitive nature of, even though it's 97% of the backbone or is the engine of America, but a lot of times and majority of times they don't have all the tools that are available for them that corporate or big corporations have. So I think that technology, as it continues to evolve and building that pipeline and the lanes per se, have enabled small business to really be more on the forefront and not just be more of a city-based type of small business, for example, but some, as you've seen, have become regional or even globally, or here throughout the U.S. So I see as we continue to look at technology, how it really creates economies of scales for small business and an opportunity to expand and grow.
Yeah, it's a cool thing about technology.
Yeah.
It's really changed the game there. Mr. Larry.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you all for being here. And thank you to MMTC, Rosa, and all the sponsors of this event. Really appreciate your focus on these important policy issues. I work for a firm called the Raven Group. Our headquarters is here in DC, but we have a number of offices all across the country. Robert Raven is a former Assistant Attorney General during the Clinton administration and helped start the firm 20 years ago, which is a bit mind-boggling that we've been around, but represent a number of clients in the space. Personally, I work on behalf of Google, as well as a not-for-profit called AI&U, if any of you have heard of that, but it's an organization that's beginning to grow. And so my focus really has been, although I've represented other clients in the quote space, is really about the education of our community. So for example, even though I used to actually be a Capitol Hill lobbyist for Google. I'm now more in the space of ensuring the partnerships are strong. What do the organizations need? And how, as the policy evolves from a particular company, in this case, Google or other companies, how is that going to impact underserved communities? And how can we best explain it so that they then can reach their constituencies? So my focus has been on that, but also, as I mentioned, with this new organization, it's a not-for-profit, is everybody's talking about AI, but not everybody understands it, right? And so how deeper are we going to get in terms of the development of the technology? It's already past our community. And so we are at the most basic level of understanding, what is AI? Oh my God, I'm scared. Am I going to lose my job? And so that's kind of been my focus. I mean, even beyond once I started learning about the importance of establishing what we're calling a AI literacy, a national program, a national outreach campaign, which we started to get into a deeper discussion during the Biden administration. I'm hoping at this point that the Trump administration will be open to that, because there was actually a report delivered by the advisory commission that President Biden put together. So we're having discussions all across Capitol Hill right now. We have a Senate AI caucus. We have a House bipartisan task force, which we hope will be reconstituted. I haven't seen it actually formally. We're still here. But that's sort of the being right now, is we need to make sure that our community understands AI and is not afraid of AI.
Yeah, I think we got an idea as to what the tech and telecom priorities here might be. But thank you. That's fascinating. And well, last but not least, Mr. Ronald Busby Sr.
Thank you to all the sponsors, to everybody that's here. First off, how many people watched Joy Reid last night? Was that not what this is all about? I felt like she was talking to us. Communication, the lack thereof, and the disinformation that's going out. Ron Busby, president of the U.S. Black Chambers. We were founded in 2009 here in Washington, D.C. I moved here from Phoenix, Arizona, where I ran a local chamber. Then we had 6 chambers. Today we have over 175 with a membership base of over 380,000 Black-owned businesses. We were founded on what we call our 6 pillars. We added the 6th pillar just the last 2 years. First one is advocacy. That's why we're here in Washington, D.C., to make sure that we're doing 3 things in reference to policy. Intentionality. We don't talk about minority issues. We don't talk about small issues or inner city or urban. We talk about Black issues, because so often Black issues get caught in conversations that really aren't speaking the truth to power. Many of times they're talking about minority, and we get lumped in that conversation, but sometimes our issues aren't priorities in those conversations. And so the U.S. Black Chamber makes Black business issues our primary. The second one is about transparency. We've talked a little bit about that today, and we'll talk more about that this afternoon. And the last one is about accountability when in reference to policy. Second one is really access to capital. We all know that minority-owned businesses are forced with getting half of what they need and paying twice for it, particularly Black firms. And we saw that during COVID. And that's where I'm going to answer that second part of your question that I know you're going to ask. Third one is really around contracting opportunities. We know that diversity, equity, inclusion is under attack by both the public sector and the private sector. And the U.S. Black Chamber is really trying to stand in the gaps to making sure that we're there to provide contract opportunities for our members, particularly for Black firms. We've had 70,000 new Black firms. That's more than half of all of the new small businesses started in America that had employees were Black-owned businesses. And so when we talk about Black issues, we know that when Black communities do well, America does well. And so we are making sure that we are intentional about our issues. Entrepreneurial training, and I agree, a lot of our members are sitting in the background talking about issues that are technological. It's facing them head on, but they don't really understand the impacts long term. The fifth one is really around chamber development. And the last one is really around information. And that's where we are really heading for the future. We saw that during COVID, we lost 41% of all Black-owned businesses. between the months of February and April, 442,000 Black firms closed their doors. And when we surveyed them, they said, no, it wasn't because we were in the wrong industries. No, it wasn't because we didn't have financial literacy. It was because we were getting bad information. We were getting late information, and we were getting information from sources that we did not know or trust. And so the U.S. Black Chamber forged an acquisition of an organization called NABOB, National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters, which represented 170